Okay, check. Next question. Could you share some of your most unforgettable memories of your bandmate, the late Garland Shuping?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Garland, of course, was playing banjo with the Bluegrass
Mhm.
Alliance when I came along. And man, what a talent. Garland played every bluegrass instrument and played them well. In fact, the Alliance, we would do one big deal for our show was since I played fiddle, Garland played fiddle, and Lonnie Pierce, we
Mm.
would do some three fiddle harmony
So,
songs like Faded Love and things like that.
uh-huh.
But Garland played every instrument. He sang every part of bluegrass songs. He wrote songs, just a great talent. But when I moved to Louisville, um, I used to go over to Garland's house, and his first wife, Glenda, would cook me a home cooked meal and we would get together and sing and play there at the house, and that's where we worked out a lot of songs and arrangements to songs that the Bluegrass Alliance would later do. Trying to think, Garland, as far as memories, he and I both loved to fish, and I remember one time we played a Sunday afternoon show at the old barn in Bean Blossom, Indiana. In
Mm.
fact, there's a behind me is a poster. I hung that I don't know that it was this particular one, but they used to have a
Mhm.
lot of Sunday afternoon shows in the old barn. That barn has burned down, no longer exists.
Okay.
So before we played, we got there early. Garland went fishing. There was a place nearby to go fish, a little lake or
Uh-huh.
something. And when he came back at showtime ready to play, he had a fish hook all the way through his thumb.
Oh.
His thumb, and banjo players kind of
Yeah.
depend on that thumb.
Right.
So he couldn't get it out, and it was too late to try to, and not any doctor nearby. So we found some cutter pliers and
Mm.
cut that hook and managed to extract that hook from his thumb, and he taped it up and put a thumb pick on, and he
Uh-huh.
played the show that
Really?
afternoon, two shows. how
Wow.
how he did that
Wow.
was pretty amazing. um,
Mm.
I don't know how he did it, but we fished together some. One time, he had
Uh-huh.
bought a boat, just a cheap boat, and all he had was a trolling motor, and it was plastic. And we went down to Nolin Reservoir, which is in Kentucky. Got
Mm.
there early, got out in what they call the stick ups, which is a bunch of trees in the water, and the fog rolled in. It's early morning, and the prop on his motor hit something and broke it, and we're stranded. We're stuck, and it was so foggy we couldn't see in any direction, and had
Mm.
no way to get back to shore, and didn't know if there was a shore. We couldn't see it, and
Interesting.
so we had great times fishing. That really wasn't one of
Uh,
them, but thankfully somebody came by in a boat and tossed us a rope and pulled us to shore. But I'll tell you one other that's probably, Take, the most
uh,
memorable
mhm.
in playing with the Bluegrass Alliance. We had a bus, or is a big motor home,
Right.
and we'd been somewhere up north playing and blew up the engine in Wheeling, West Virginia. So we had to leave the bus, and we managed to get cars to take home. And the
Mhm.
next show we had was McKinney, Texas. And so we had the bus in Wheeling, being a new engine built for it. And so we took cars, and it's a long way from Louisville, Kentucky to McKinney, Texas in a old Cutlass, I think it was. And we had two cars. In one car was our manager and I think Lonnie Pierce. And then in the other car, we took Garland's car. He had a
Uh,
65 Ford Galaxy. I still remember it. And he sat in the front, and I forget who else was with us then in the front. I was playing guitar because we'd
mhm.
lost our guitar player, and I was playing guitar. So it was me and the bass player, Steve Maxwell, in the back,
Uh-huh.
and Garland was driving. And I think maybe it was Dave Marshall playing mandolin in the front. I can't remember.
Yeah.
So anyway, I do remember that we're sitting with that big bass fiddle on the top of the seats in that Cutlass, riding like this. at the time, of course, the air conditioner in Garland's car didn't work. It's hot summertime. We had the windows down, and Steve Maxwell sits next to me in the back, and I'm on the other side. We both at the time smoked, and unfortunately, one or the other of us, not sure who, when it was common to flick a cigarette out the window. Well, it probably blew back in the window and we didn't know it. So we got to the festival in Texas, no problem. Garland decided to go back to a restaurant he passed and eat. We didn't want to go. While he was there inside, somebody came running in and said, "There's a car outside in the parking lot and smoke is billowing out the window." And it was his. He went out there, and the whole back seat where you sit, that whole back seat had caught on fire, and we assume it had to have been from a cigarette tossed out the window that flew back in, smoldering, and it burned up that seat. All that was left was the springs. So you don't just find a replacement for the seat for a 65 Ford Galaxy. He came back to the festival and he was hot. I mean, not from fire, but mad, of course, because he knew what had happened. And he went to a junkyard and managed to find a back seat that it didn't match the color. It wasn't even close, but he put that in there. And that was later. We actually rode around with a blanket thrown over the springs, and the smell of burnt upholstery was horrible. But poor Garland, I'll never forget that. None of us confessed to it because we weren't sure what happened, but that was pretty funny. But Garland was a great musician. I was with him when he played lots of banjos. He had a Baldwin banjo. They called it a Style E or something like that. I was with him when he bought that up in Cincinnati, and he played that when he got that, and the whole time I was with the Alliance. But great musician. He asked me later, like 1993, to record and play mandolin on might have been the last banjo CD instrumental he did. And I went up from Gainesville, Georgia, up to Virginia and recorded with him. And we fished up there, of course. He'd come down here. I live near Lake Lanier, big 40,000 acre lake. And so we were fishing partners and collaborated on songs and played together and traveled. So great memories of Garland.
Great. Thank you, John. Jack. Now, Jack, from what I understand, you left the Bluegrass Alliance around 1973.
That's 70, late 73, almost 74.
Yeah.
Fall of 73, I guess.
Right. Then nearly 30 years later, you released the album Re-Alliance in 2001.
Yeah.
Is that timeline accurate?
Yes, 2000 and I think it was probably 2001.
Wow.
That album.
During that period between the early 1970s and 2000, what path did your life and musical interest take? I assume that you studied theology during the early years, became a pastor, and devoted much of your time to that calling. If you are comfortable with sharing, I'd love to hear what inspired you during these years and how music remained part of your journey.
Sure. Well, in 1973, I had a radical conversion to Christ. I didn't grow up in church and really didn't consider myself religious at all. But when I was 20 years old, I gave my heart and life to Jesus Christ, and it changed my path, my direction, my focus about everything, my whole life, and music especially. And I just felt like there was something else I should be doing, and it wasn't the music I was playing. So I left the Bluegrass Alliance. I had opportunities to play a lot while I was in Louisville. I played with banjo player Jim Smoke, Jim Smoke was a great banjo player, and he and I and a guy named Cappy Lyons traveled and played after I left the Alliance, and then I freelanced with different ones. Played fiddle a little bit here and there with Buck White and the girls Cheryl and Sharon. Cheryl and Sharon were good friends of my wife Susan, and so I and then played various places. Had offers to play country, all the things I thought would be my dream, Merle Haggard and all that. I just said no, and people started offering. Jim and Jesse, I had the opportunity. I did audition with Jesse, but I didn't play with them or anybody. I just felt called of God to go to school and learn about the Bible. So I did go to Bible college and surrendered my life. It changed me forever, changed my whole life and path. And I wanted to live my life for Christ. So that took me a path of seminary, and I pastored and preached the gospel in churches for 40 plus years, but I didn't give up the music. It just took its proper place in my life, I think is the way to put it. And a lot of doors opened. I continued to play music throughout. You mentioned, so my musical journey was intermittent after I became a Christian. I concentrated more on studying to enter the ministry, and then I still played, but I wasn't pursuing it as a career. And but opportunities always came up, and I continued to try to stay proficient on all the instruments.
Interesting. Now, I'd love to shift our focus to your current group, the Czech Nation Band. Was the band originally formed as a way to share your passion for bluegrass gospel and hymns? Or did that spiritual element emerge more organically along the way?
No, it was originally formed to help me pay off my house mortgage. It was all about trying to generate some extra income. And, plus, it also, of course, satisfied my passion to play. And I mean, I've played when I moved to Gainesville, Georgia, which is where I live now, halfway between Gainesville and Dahlonega, Georgia. I played in a lot of groups. Well, prior to that, actually, moving back to Georgia, after I got out of college, Bible college, I went to South Louisiana and worked in churches there. But still, that's when while I was there, I won the Louisiana State Fiddle Championship. But I played with different people there, and then I moved back to Georgia. I've kind of moved around, and then went back to school in Chattanooga, and played with Gary Davis. I mentioned Biscuit earlier, and we played fiddle contest. He and I would just enter every category, except he didn't play fiddle, and we'd always take home the money, and that's how I paid my school bill. Then we played at a place called Ruby Falls. If you travel in the South, you'll see signs, see Ruby Falls. And we played up there in the summertime every day, 6 days a week. Then I moved to Ohio to pastor church, moved back to Georgia, and here I am to stay, I hope. So when I moved back, I played with various groups, played electric fiddle in a country and pop band. They sang old show tunes, and played some in a Western swing band, and played with my family band. One of my you had asked, I guess, by email about accomplishments I had or felt most proud of. And I have 3 children, and they all play music, and they all sing, and they're all multi-instrumentalists. They play all the stringed instruments plus piano and drums and electric guitar. Anyway, as a family, when they were young, we had a family band and traveled around regionally and played and sang. And then you mentioned that Realliance in 1998, a fellow named Barry Palmer in this area he started, I guess he reformed a new Bluegrass Alliance. He became good friends with Lonnie Pierce, and Lonnie Pierce quit performing and traveling as a Bluegrass Alliance in 1978. But Barry was given by him all the rights to the band and the name and masters to the albums that had been recorded. And Barry in 1998 started the group, and he found out about me and asked me to come play fiddle. And I did, and we recorded that album Re-Alliance. I think it's probably online. And we actually toured Japan, Take, in 2001. And flew into Osaka, and I was trying to think the place. We played at a bluegrass camp. I'd call it a festival in Shiga, I guess it is. It's north. Yeah, Shiga, and played at the Canadian Academy International School, played some other schools, played some clubs in Kobe, Shaggy, and I think was one place. Anyway, that was 2001, September 2001. And then I spent 10 years playing fiddle with an old bluegrass boy, Curtis Blackwell, who lives in North Carolina, and Curtis Blackwell and the Dixie Bluegrass Boys. And I played fiddle, and they would do, oh my, I'm still pastoring a church full time, but we would do, I probably played 60 to 75 gigs a year or more with various people, including Curtis. And then after that, he and I formed a group, Nation and Blackwell. Nation and Blackwell band played. We toured Ireland a couple of times. First time was 2011, and then toured again in 2014. Curtis and I did. And I played mandolin fiddle, Curtis on guitar, and my wife, Susan, played bass, and then we used various banjo players. So that's a long way to say the Chuck Nation band formed about 2014 or 2015, and it was an opportunity for me to play what I wanted to play and where I wanted to play and when and what and all that. With my wife Susan on bass, my daughter Libby is playing. Excuse me, my daughter Libby plays guitar. I have various banjo players, have had and do have some great banjo players that play. We recorded, I think, at least one album. And so we're still doing that. In fact, we're playing this weekend about 100 and something miles from here, and still very active as the Chuck Nation band. But the original impetus for that was just to try to make some extra income, which thankfully I've been able to do. And everything's paid off, so I'm having a good time playing.
Chuck, I have a question on what you just said. I've checked your website, and I noticed that virtually all of your upcoming gigs are in church venues. Do you still play secular venues and festivals with the Chuck Nation band?
Of course, yeah. And yeah, it's seasonal. I mean, it falls that way sometimes, and but that's not intentional. But yes, we do. I mean, I tell everybody we play everything, and we're not a gospel music band. We do play gospel music, but we play all kinds of music. And we play, yes, churches, but we also play festivals and theaters and concerts and parties and weddings and hog callings and taffy pulls and tractor pulls or wherever, you know. And they come, and I've slowed down, though. I'm getting older. I'm 71, and so the rigors of travel eventually just begin to exhaust you. We've actually, interestingly, Richard and Take, I connected with a guy by the name of Tim Sharp, who is in the choral world. I know nothing about the choral world, but he composed and conducted a work that he developed, he and a guy named Wes Ramsey, called the High Lonesome Mass. And it's a combination. It takes the 6 movements Well, the intro, it's a cappella, but it takes the 6 movements of the Latin Mass and combines it with the old Sacred Heart music, the old time gospel music stuff. And it's all accompanied with bluegrass instrumentation. And it sounds like it'd be a train wreck, but it's actually very beautiful. We're performing that this weekend over in Dalton, Georgia. But so we started doing that with Tim Sharp and kind of became his go-to bluegrass band for that work. We performed it over 75 times all over the world. And as we perform that, it also opens the door for the Chuck Nation Band to do our show and present ourselves to folks that otherwise would never have heard of us. And we've traveled. We played at Carnegie Hall. We played the old Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. We've toured China twice, and Argentina, toured there with it, and all over the Southeast and everywhere from Texas and Oklahoma to Virginia and all points in between, playing that. So that opened doors to play in a lot of churches because the Latin Mass, of course, is a religious work. And but we play all kinds. We play a lot of concerts and shows. We've got one coming up in May. I don't know that we keep everything up to date on that website as far as schedule that we should. But anyway, yeah, it's not exclusive to that, but it does seem to fall that way sometimes.
You know, I watched a video of you at with your Chuck Nation Band at Emory University in Atlanta with a big choral section and a choral director. And I just couldn't believe it was so different and so compelling. I mean, it just drew you right in.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And that's the Atlanta Master Chorale, and Eric Nelson is the director there. And that's like, in my mind, that's the premier choral group that I've ever heard. I mean, and everybody respects him and them. And it was a great privilege and opportunity for them to ask us to come and accompany their great choir, which is made up of professors and teachers and professionals. And man, it was first class all the way. But yeah, that's a very beautiful work, and it was a joy to play there at the Schwartz Center on Emory University in Atlanta. And that also has opened doors of opportunity for more venues for the Chuck Nation Band as well.
Check another question I want to ask. Not many bands have experienced the honor of performing at Carnegie Hall. Your band did it 10 years ago in 2015. What was that experience like?
Well, I just have to tell you, Take, I just felt I had never been there, of course, and never played there before. So when we got there and we did our show, the Chuck Nation Band did our set, and then we also accompanied, as I mentioned, the High Lonesome Mass with Tim Sharp conducting, and he had assembled voices from all over the country to come and sing. It was a large group that we accompanied them also. And, Carnegie Hall, I mean, everybody that's anybody has played there. And I was thinking of all the folks, I thought, man, they are not going to like us. I mean, we're just a bunch of hicks from Georgia. And we opened the show, and this is, I don't know what to expect. I think they're just going to stare at us and say, what in the world is that? So I had some apprehension about it, but I decided just to be myself and be who I am and do what we do. And of course, we walked out on that great stage, and there's like 3 levels of balconies, and they're all full, and the place is packed out. And I just walked out and said, everybody say howdy. And, that's kind of a Southern greeting. And the entire auditorium just resonated with everybody saying howdy. And I thought, okay, we're going to be all right. And we kicked off our first song, and we did our set. And at the end, we actually got a standing ovation. So to get a standing O at Carnegie Hall, that was a thrill. That was just a wonderful experience.
That's great. Okay, Chuck, this is going to be the last question. Okay.
Okay.
You built your band around faith and family, two pillars that seem to be growing rare in today's music scene. Do you think the tradition of family bands can still thrive in today's world?
Sorry, Taka. I only got part of that question. I'm a little hard of hearing, and
Okay,
I'm deaf in this
let
ear
me
and can't
repeat.
hear out of this
Okay,
one. Can you repeat
do
that
you,
for me?
okay. Do you think the tradition of family bands can still thrive in today's world?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no question about it.
Mhm,
Maybe even more so now. I see a
mhm,
lot of families with young children that are teaching their kids how to play musical instruments, and I teach a couple of music camps every year, and
mhm,
it's mostly young people and families, and so I see a lot of that, and then also. I've judged some fiddle contests, and which always include band contests, banjo, mandolin, etc. And a lot of families come to those contests,
mhm.
and so I see a lot of family bands still, and I think that's a good thing. Of course, there has always been family bands. I mean, the brothers bands, Monroe
Okay.
Brothers, Delmore's, all those brother bands are, back in the 30s, 20s, and 30s, and so on. So yeah, I think that's probably what is keep helps to keep an interest in the current bluegrass, whatever's happening in bluegrass scene is families that are learning to play
Mhm.
and sing together. That's a good thing.
Great. Richard, anything to say about this?
Sorry?
Richard, anything to say?
No, just that I agree. I remember the current
Mm.
people like Billy Strings learned from
Mhm.
his father as well.
Yeah,
I think
All right. Okay. I'm personally hoping we'll see more family bands in the future, bands like yours that carry both the heart and heritage of bluegrass.
And
Thank
Chuck,
you,
it was
Jack.
wonderful to hear about you and your collaborations and your whole life, really, and how it changed so much from the age of 20.
yeah. I tell you, and about that, Richard. When I gave my life and my heart to Christ and began to live for Him and seek to
Mhm.
please Him and Him alone, it opened a lot of doors, not only for me to preach. Before we began, Take said I had a great voice. I don't hear that myself, but maybe he dialed me in and the Lord tuned my voice so I could be a good preacher. But musically, a lot of doors open. I've traveled to over 20 countries with my little fiddle, taking volunteer church groups on mission trips to mostly to the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe countries, preaching the gospel and starting churches and helping missionaries. And music, of course, is a universal language, and I'm monolingual. I only speak English and don't do that very well.
Uh-huh.
But the fiddle is multilingual, and I have played for in a lot of countries, and for a lot of people just to gain a hearing and draw
Mhm.
attention to my main purpose for being there, which was to preach the gospel and help those folks. So yeah, my direction and path has changed. And I'll have to say that also I'm enjoying music a lot more than I ever have. And I
Mhm.
feel like I'm playing better than I ever have, even as an old man. So I'm enjoying it, having a great time. And I have to give the Lord all the credit and all the glory for that, because otherwise I probably would have already quit and given up on it. So I'm still having a great time musically and enjoying playing.
That's
Great.
wonderful.
Jack, thank you so much for sharing your incredible stories with us today. It was truly an honor to have you here.
Yes, Chuck, it was wonderful to hear about you and all of your musical experiences.
Thank you so much, and I'm honored that you put me on your list. I'm happy to be a part of it, and glad we could work it out and get together. Thank you very much.
And to all of you watching, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this interview as much as we did.
And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more interviews like this.
That's right, and stay tuned for our next episode. We'll be talking with Wes Golding. Until then, take care and keep the music alive.
See you next time.
Bye.